Hello and welcome to the second week of reading. School reading this week from the School English Explained course with the Adult Education Service of Coventry. My name's Debbie and I'm your tutor for the course. I hope you're well and having a good week so far. Right, then let's go to the slides. Okay, so there's my email address. Should you need it to contact me, and the email address is for the Adult Education Service where you can find out about more courses that we run. Might be of interest to you, and there's a telephone number for us if you'd like to ask any questions. The session will be approximately 45 minutes long as usual. We have a duty of care towards yourself for safeguarding and the prevent agenda, and we value and encourage the British rules of life similarly to schools. So this is School English Reading at the Schools Explained, and this is week 2 of the course. Just wondered which activities you might have had a chance to try it at home. Have a think for a minute. Was anything particularly helpful? Any of them maybe not quite age appropriate or stage appropriate for your children yet? Just remember to hold on to them. Some of them you could adapt yourself, and some hopefully will become more appropriate as they move through school. So let's look at today's objectives. We're going to look at how reading is done at school. We're going to think some more about open and closed questions, some of the vocabulary that's used in schools. We're going to do some reading activities around inference, which is quite an important part of what the children are taught, and the reading criteria around the national curriculum, so what they're expected to learn and how rhyme fits in with this. Just take a moment to think about where you'd put yourself by the traffic lights as things stand with this. Do you know much about inference and open and closed questioning? Do you know much about the reading criteria for the national curriculum? Would you be green? Do you know a lot? Maybe you'd be yellow or orange if you know a little bit, or you might be red if it's all brand new to you. Just take a moment to have a think. Just bear in mind the task images. I do try and get you a bit involved, even though it's recorded. It's important that you obviously have go at some of these things just to help with your own learning. Please do go along, and remember you can pause me if you need a bit longer for things. So that's quite handy. So just a refresher then, last week we thought about 10 things to do with the book, and we thought about these things you could do at home. These things can still be done in school, okay? Did you try any of them at home? Did you try any questioning, making predictions, choosing a sentence, writing it down, chopping it up? Did you act any out with your children? Did anybody manage to do any hot seating last week? Be interested to know. Okay, just don't forget these activities, and these aren't just for at home. These activities and more will be done at school as well. Okay, let's have a look at this then. 3 questions. Do you like sausages? Do you like the rain? And she's sad, isn't she? Remember, closed questions usually require a short, normally one or 2 word answer, as in yes, no. Okay, open questions encourage a longer response. Okay, they lead children to explain more, helping them develop their vocabulary, their reasoning, their sentence structure, and their own thoughts and comprehension. Okay, it helps with literacy skills throughout, not just with reading. Okay, and it's really important. So if we can take the opportunity to ask open questions, open-ended questions to our children, it gives them more opportunity to talk. So let's open one up. So rather than asking, she's sad, isn't she? We could ask a more open question, like how do you think the character is feeling and why? Okay, so how do you think the character is feeling? You might get a 1-word answer from that: sad, unhappy. But if you say how do you think the character is feeling and why, she's feeling sad because she's lost a teddy. She's feeling sad because she's on her own. Okay, it begins to bring up other things that you can then develop and discuss. Okay. We're going to have a look at a really lovely children's story now. It's called The Lighthouse Keeper's Lunch. You might have heard of it. I want you to just make some notes as we go along. I want you to think of any good questions that you could ask about the story to your children. Okay, so think about some good questions or predictions that you could make. You know, what do you think will happen next? What do you think this character is going to do? Okay, those sorts of things, and see if you can come up with some good questions. Okay, let me bring up the other PowerPoint and we'll watch this one. Here we go then. So, The Lighthouse Keeper's Lunch by Rhonda and David Armitage. Once there was a lighthouse keeper called Mr. Grinling. At night time, he lived in a small white cottage perched high on the cliffs. In the daytime, he rowed out to the lighthouse on the rocks to clean and polish the light. Grinling was a most industrious lighthouse keeper. Come rain or shine, he tended his light. Sometimes at night, as Mr. Grinling lay sleeping in his warm bed, the ships would toot to tell him that his light was shining brightly and clearly out to sea. Each morning, while Mr. Grinling polished the light, Mrs. Grinling worked in the kitchen of the little cottage on the cliffs, concocting a delicious lunch for him. Once she had prepared the lunch, she packed it into a special basket and clipped it onto the wire that ran from the little white cottage to the lighthouse on the rocks. But one Monday, something terrible happened. Mrs. Grinling had prepared a particularly appetizing lunch. She had made a mixed seafood salad, a lighthouse sandwich, cold chicken salad, sausages and crisps, peach surprise, iced sea biscuits, drinks and assorted fruit. She put the lunch in the basket as usual and sent it down the wire. But the lunch did not arrive. It was spotted by 3 scavenging seagulls who set upon it with a great gusto. "This is an excellent peach surprise, boys. She's a great cook, Fred. Scrumptious lunch, Tom." "Clear off, you varmints!" shouted Mr. Grinling, but the seagulls took not the slightest notice. That evening, Mr. and Mrs. Grinling decided on a plan to baffle the seagulls. "Tomorrow I shall tie a napkin to the basket," said Mrs. Grinling. "Of course, my dear," agreed Mr. Grinling. "A sound plan." That evening, and there's the seagulls. "I'll have to try harder than this to stop us, Bert." Oh dear. On Tuesday evening, Mr. and Mrs. Grinling racked their brains for another plan. "They're a brazen lot, those seagulls," said Mrs. Grinling. "Brazen indeed," said Mr. Grinling. "What shall we do?" "Our cat does not appear to like seagulls," said Mrs. Grinling. "No, my dear," said Mr. Grinling. "Hamish is an accomplished seagull chaser." "Of course!" exclaimed Mrs. Grinling. "Tomorrow Hamish can guard the lunch." "A most ingenious plan," agreed Mr. Grinling. Hamish did not think the plan was ingenious at all. He spat and hissed as Mrs. Grinling secured him to the basket. There, Hamish," said Mrs. Grinling consolingly. I'll have a tasty piece of herring waiting for you when you arrive home." Sadly, Flying did not agree with Hamish. His fur stood on end when the basket swayed. His whiskers drooped when he peered down at the wet blue sea, and he felt much too sick even to notice the seagulls, let alone scare them away from the lunch. "Pretty pussy, like a piece of lobster. Mornay. This food gets better every day, Fred. Aren't you going to chase us, pussy?" Lack a day," said Mr. Grinling sadly. "Meow, meow," agreed Hamish pitifully. On Wednesday evening, Mr. and Mrs. Grinling racked their brains again for a new plan. "What shall we do?" said Mr. Grinling. Mrs. Grinling looked thoughtfully. "I have it!" she exclaimed. "Just the mixture for hungry seagulls." "Indeed, my dear," said Mr. Grinling. "What have you in mind?" "Wait and see," said Mrs. Grinling. "Just wait and see." "Mustard sandwiches," chuckled Mr. Grinling. "A superb plan, my dear. Truly superb." On Thursday morning, Mrs. Grinling carefully packed the mustard sandwiches and sent them off down the wire to the seagulls. "Ugh! Yuck! Ugh!" On Friday morning, Mrs. Grinling repeated the mustard mixture. "All right, boys, let's go and have lunch somewhere else. It's the same as yesterday's, Fred." So, on Saturday, up in the little white cottage on the cliffs, a jubilant Mrs. Grinling put away the mustard pot before she prepared a scrumptious lunch for Mr. Grinling. While he waited for his lunch down in the lighthouse on the rocks, Mr. Grinling sang snatches of old sea shanties as he surveyed the coastline through his telescope. And this is what he saw. "No mustard in this lot, Tom. We'll fly back here for lunch again tomorrow, boys. This is a delicious chocolate eclair, Fred. Oh, well, such is life, mused Mr. Grinling as he sat down to enjoy a leisurely lunch in the warm sunshine. Let's just get ourselves back to here. Bear with me, guys. Sorry. Okay. Lovely story. I hope you agree. Lots of really interesting stuff in there. Some beautiful pictures as well. It's definitely worth a look. So here's a matching activity based on the story. And the idea is it makes children have understood the story, okay? Linking it into comprehension, which we looked at last week. If a child can't answer most of the questions, you'd look at the story again and make sure they could. You'd probably look at a story more than once anyway, particularly with younger children. And you might help them with the matching. You might read them to them and they can link the event to the reason. So for instance, the first one's done for us. The ships would toot to tell Mr. Grinling, and lying down to that his light was shining brightly. Okay, next one. Mrs. Grinling put lunch into a basket and sent it down the wire. So then you go through them and see if you can find the right one. Okay, so it could get to Mr. Grinling in the lighthouse. So 3 seagulls ate it. So to guard the lunch from the seagulls. And again, as well as it making sense in terms of it linking together, it also has to make sense grammatically, obviously. And you just work them out and join them up. Okay, quite a nice activity to have a go at with your children. And it's going on the comprehension, the understanding of the story. So some ideas to do with this: open and close questions. Okay. Was Mr. Grinling happy when the seagull took his lunch? No. Close question. Why wasn't Mr. Grinling very happy? It's an open question, isn't it? The children have got to explain a little bit more. They've got to have understood a little bit more. Prediction. When Mrs. Grinling put mustard on the sandwiches, what do you think will happen next? Sequencing, putting it in order. Thinking about the individual characters, the lighthouse keeper and his wife, and the cat. The poor cat wasn't that happy, was it? And the seagulls. Hot seating. So here's an example of a simple sequencing activity you could do with the story. Okay, so you've got four pictures there, four sections. Okay, you read each part of the story with the picture to help you with the comprehension. Cut them out and sequence them in order. Okay, so we've got, but the lunch did not arrive. It was spotted by 3 scavenging seagulls. Mustard sandwich is a superb plan. Oh, well, such is life. Once there was a lighthouse keeper called Mr. Grinling. Okay, so you get the children to cut them up and put them into order, put a number at the top. Okay, and here's the order that we'd want: 1, 2, 3, 4. Quite a nice activity. The pictures help with the comprehension, which with younger children, we're trying to teach them to use all the clues they can. It's not cheating. Pictures are helpful and they hook children in as well, and they help with the questioning, the understanding, and the ideas. Another nice activity is to hot seat the seagull. Okay, so in hot seating, which I did explain a little bit about last week, you pretend to become one of the characters from the story and you answer questions as though you were them. So it's really good with children because you can get them to sit down and come up with questions together, and then somebody takes on the character. Quite often the teacher will have to sort of role model it first, have to show them how to do it, and it's about helping the children to consider things from other points of view, to really explore empathy because they're taking on a different personality and a different character. And the idea that people might have different opinions and being able to have those conflicts, if you like, in a controlled manner. You really do have to throw yourself into it as an adult if you're doing it though, because if you sit there like a really bored seagull, it's not going to work. Okay, but it can really, really inspire children. Okay, some questions you might come up with: why did you steal the sandwiches? Are you usually dishonest? What's your favourite food? How did you feel when the lighthouse keepers shouted at you? Okay, so some really nice ideas that you can use there, perhaps. Okay, so describing words, adjectives. Okay, they give us more detail about something. They tell us about something in more detail. And the key when reading is that they help us to imagine a bit more clearly what the writer is trying to tell us. Okay, if you're reading a book, okay, Some books have pictures in them. As you get older, you tend to lose pictures a little bit more, and it's about your own imagination. Okay, the words take you off somewhere. It's your own escapist world, really. And what I see when I read a story will probably be quite different to what you might see if you read the same story, because we're relying on our own imagination, our own experiences and ideas. Okay, it's the beauty of getting lost in a good book, I think. Okay, but without adjectives, it's a bit plain and bland and boring. For instance, a dog. Okay, there's that noun, a dog. Okay, but I might be thinking about the last pet dog I had, which was actually a tiny dog, would fit in the handbag. You might be thinking about the last pet dog your parents had, which was a gigantic dog that you could barely get in the car. And actually, in the story, it might be a large, hairy, snarling dog. Okay, all very different. And the idea is that these adjectives, they actually give us more of an insight into what we mean. Okay, a car, a dog, a tree, a bus, a house doesn't give us much. The adjectives really start to stretch that out. And if you have a look at a large, hairy, snarling dog, we've got 3 adjectives there. Okay, really building a picture. Okay, and again with vocabulary, the more vocabulary children have, the more interesting words they'll be able to use, the more interesting it will be for them to write and for others to read. More successful they'll be able to be. Let's have a look at this in the context of the Lighthouse Keeper's lunch then. Okay, how adjectives have been used in the story. So let's have a look. Mr. Grinling was a most industrious lighthouse keeper. So industrious means to be like really hard working and dedicated to your job. So he's not just any old lighthouse keeper who rocks up. It's his job, it's his life, it's a vocation, I guess. Come rain or shine, he tended his light. Okay. If we tend for something, we care for it, and in quite a loving way. Okay. So he's not just giving it a wipe every week because he should. He's caring for it. He really takes good care of it. Okay, which already in 2 sentences builds up quite a picture of his character and how seriously he takes what he does. So Mrs. Grinling worked in the kitchen of the little white cottage on the cliffs, concocting a delicious lunch for him. Okay, if you concoct something, you're kind of coming up with almost like a special recipe, a special blend. You're taking a lot of time to do it. It's very considered. You're not just dumping sandwiches into a bag. But the lunch did not arrive. It was spotted by 3 scavenging seagulls. Scavenging seagulls. Got a nice bit of alliteration there for a start off. Ass and scavenge, it's like begging, dodging around, underhand. Yeah. And they devoured it with great gusto. If you devour something, you really enjoy it. Okay, it's really, really tasty. And gusto is to do it quickly. They eat it quite quickly. The seagulls haven't got time to hang around. They are a brazen lot, those seagulls. Yeah, brazen. Kind of don't care who sees them, not bothered by how others might judge them. They're just going to do it anyway. And then he tells her her plan is a most ingenious plan, very clever, very well thought out. Okay, so even though this is a children's book with lots of lovely pictures in it and quite a simple story, it can be a really useful text for actually drawing out and getting children to look at and introduce some more complicated vocabulary in quite an easy way. Okay. And once children have experience of these words and then might be asked to do an activity where they label something as brazen or ingenious, it actually, they're using the vocabulary, they're introduced to it, they're not bothered by it, they're not scared of it. It actually gets built into what they're doing, which will really help them with their literacy skills and everything. Because if they can read and they can write and they can listen and they can talk, that's a key to pretty much every other subject that we can deal with. Okay, really useful. So let's think of some adjectives to describe the mustard sandwiches that the seagulls did not eat. Okay, what have we got? Awful, bad, nasty. Yeah, bad's quite an easy one. You'll get children talking about things being bad. We can stretch them out to awful and nasty. Foul, it's quite a good one. Revolting, disgusting, inedible. Okay, as well as putting in some adjectives, the bad mustard sandwich, the inedible mustard sandwich, the disgusting mustard sandwich. We can build on our type of adjectives. You know, we can make them more adventurous, more exciting, more descriptive, more interesting, and we can encourage children to do that. And that is part of what we're doing. Okay, a task then, a nice one, to design a new sandwich. The aim to scare away the seagulls, and how to fill it with disgusting things. So getting children to use their imagination. It's been modelled for them in the story. Now they can have a go themselves. So what would you put in a disgusting sandwich? Okay. So maybe things you don't like. So there's a nice personal tie here. If a child particularly doesn't like cucumber, that's probably going to go into this sandwich. Okay. You can get more adventurous. You know, you could do mud, stones, dust, other things, you know, other non-food things. Can you add some adjectives? So would it be lumpy mud, gritty sand, monstrous cucumber? You know, can you make it more exciting? You might ask them to draw their sandwich and label it. And then they could use their labels and adjectives to base sentences. So we could have cold turkey, yucky mud. In my sandwich, there is cold turkey and yucky mud. So it's about taking these little bits and building them together. Okay. Could they make it? Maybe some of these might be better made outside. Okay, but again, just getting the children involved. Okay, it goes from being a simple story that we read to lots of opportunities for building on what they've heard. Just because children can't read the story independently doesn't mean they're not readers. It just means, you know, they'll be using the pictures, they'll be using some help. It's a really good start. Okay, they don't have to wait to be able to read all the words to be really good readers. Okay, they can enjoy the story and experience it too. Another example of this time writing instructions. Okay, this is something, a non-fiction activity that children do in Key Stage 1. Making a sandwich, and here it's just going to be a straightforward cheese and tomato sandwich for his lunch. Okay, so again, a nice link in. So number 1, first spread butter on both sides of the bread. Number 2, carefully chop the cheese into fine slices. Number 3, next put the cheese evenly on one slice of bread. Number 4, then slice the cherry tomatoes in half evenly. Number 5, paste the tomato on top of the cheese. Number 6, finally enjoy the results of your delicious sandwich. Do you notice all those bossy words in there? They're the imperative verbs. They're the ones that tell us what to do. Okay, imperative verb is the correct term for them. Let's find them. Here we go. In the yellow. Spread, chop, put, slice, place, enjoy. Okay. So within these being instructions, you're going to have some of those imperative verbs that tell us what to do. Don't put having an instruction that doesn't make it clear for you. Okay. Imagine an alien's landed from the sky and you're telling them what to do. You know, you're giving instructions. Okay. Something else in here. Time connectives. Time connectives are in blue. We've got first, next, then, and finally. Okay. Time connectives, join ideas, can be at the start of a sentence, can be in the middle of two ideas joined together. Okay, but they order things first, next, after, then, before. Okay, time words. Really useful in instructions as well. Okay, so type of questions that we might come across in school to do with reading. Okay, so in Key Stage 1, which is year 1 and 2 in primary school, children work towards these criteria. Okay, they need to be able to draw on knowledge of vocabulary to understand texts. They need to be able to identify and explain key aspects of fiction and non-fiction texts, such as characters, events, titles, and information. They need to know the difference. They need to be able to identify and explain the sequence of events in texts, make inferences from the text, and predict what might happen on the basis of what has been read so far. So already in the activities we've just been looking at, the prediction, yeah, sequencing, you can sort of see how these activities build in. Okay, so that will build into these sorts of questions. So identify and explain key aspects of fiction and non-fiction text, such as characters, events, titles, and information. So how do you know it's non-fiction? These are sorts of questions we might ask children. How do you know it wouldn't have a glossary? Where or when does the story take place? What did he or she look like? Where did he or she live? Who are the characters in the book, and through whose eyes is the story told? Okay. 1C then, identify and explain the sequence of events in text. We might say what happens first in the story. What does the main character do in the middle of the story? How does the hero save the day in the story? Okay, so those simple cutting and ordering pictures is a really good start to this. Then it gets harder, and this is what we're going to have a bit of a closer look at today. Making inferences. Okay, so an inference is when things are clearly outlaid to us in plain words, but we have to pick up on the atmosphere and the other things that are going on. Okay, so what makes you think it? What gives you that impression? How do you feel about? Explain why. I wonder what the writer intended. What do these words mean, and why do you think the author chose to use them? What was inferred? What was the meaning? The less explicit meaning is inference. So it's not, I want you to do this because of that. It's actually building a slower picture, maybe. It's less direct. Okay. It's an important skill needed for a reader, and children are very much encouraged to develop their skills in this area. Let's look at it further. Let's look at this. The head teacher stormed into the silent assembly hall. She crossed her arms and looked at the children's expectant faces. Okay. Let's look at those highlighted words. There are adjectives. She stormed, silent, crossed her arms, expectant faces. Okay. They give us more detail about the noun. They're really important to imagine the atmosphere in that assembly hall. We don't know how many children are there. We don't know where the windows are. But she stormed in. It's silent. She's got her arms crossed and the children look expectant. How engaged you in wanting to know what happened next? Could you predict it? Take a moment to think of the next sentence. What would you like the next sentence to be? Pause me, have a think. Okay. My next sentence. She took in a deep breath and hollered, I cannot believe what I have just heard. I want to hear the next one. What did you come up with? Okay. It's hooking in the reader. That's what authors try and do. When we're writing, we're trying to hook them in. They want to know more. Okay. So this is something you can have a go at with the Handa story that we looked at last week as well. See if you can do some of that really basically. Some of the sequencing, quite easy to do. Can you make some predictions based on what you've read so far? We're going to have a go now with this Key Stage 2 material. So that's year 3 to 6. Harder material, it's a poem. Okay, I'll read it to you and then we'll work through it. It's called The Visitor by Ian Seralia. A crumbling churchyard, the sea and the moon. The waves had gouged out grave and bone. A man was walking, late and alone. He saw a skeleton on the ground, a ring on a bony finger he found. He ran home to his wife and gave her the ring. Oh, where did you get it? He said, not a thing. It's the loveliest ring in the world, she said. As it glowed on her finger, they slipped off to bed. At midnight they woke in the dark outside. Give me my ring! A chill voice cried. What was that, William? What did it say? Don't worry, my dear, it'll soon go away. I'm coming! A skeleton opened the door. Give me my ring! It was crossing the floor. What was that, William? What did it say? Don't worry, my dear, it'll soon go away. I'm reaching you now. I'm climbing the bed. The wife pulled the sheet right over her head. It was torn from her grasp and tossed in the air. I'll drag you out of bed by the hair. What was that, William? What did it say? Throw the ring for the window. Throw it away. She threw it. The skeleton leapt from the sill, scooped up the ring and clattered downhill. Fainter and fainter. Then all was still. Okay, so looking at a more complicated poem now, something a bit different to the Lighthouse Keeper's Lunch. Same thing again. Okay, thinking about characters, thinking about events, thinking about the information we can find, thinking about the sequence of events, inferences we can make. This is a really good one for inference. Okay, let's have a little look at the performance of the poem as well by some year 6 children.
A crumbling churchyard, the sea and the moon. The waves had gouged out grave and bone. A man was walking, late and alone. He saw a skeleton on the ground, a ring on a bony finger he found. He ran home to his wife and gave her the ring.
Oh, where did you get it?
He said not a thing.
The loveliest ring in the world,
She said, as it glowed on her finger, they slipped off to bed. At midnight, they woke in the dark outside.
Give me my ring.
A chill voice cried.
What was that, William? What did it say? Don't worry, dear. It'll soon go away. I'm coming.
A skeleton opened the door.
Give me my ring.
It was crossing the floor.
What was that, William? What did it say? Don't worry, dear. It'll soon go away. I'm reaching you now. I'm climbing the bed.
The wife pulled the sheet right over her head. It was torn from her grasp and tossed in the air.
I'll drag you out of bed by the hair. What was that, William? What did it say? Throw the ring out the window. Throw it away.
She threw it. The skeleton leapt from the sill, scooped up the ring and clattered downhill. Fainter and fainter. Then all was still.
I think that's really, really, really well done, and really nice. A really, really nice version there. And again, good for the children to act it out, to understand it, to practice. Really nice, a really nice activity. The acting out, you know, it's not just for fun. Although the fun is important, it hooks them in. Okay, so let's have a look at some possible questions then. Name the characters in the poem. So William, his wife, the skeleton. Okay. Number 2, which of these words is not a synonym of gouged out? Do you know what a synonym is? It's another word that means the same sort of thing, okay? So gouged out means to sort of scoop. So we've got scoop out, excavate, hollow out, or valley. Number 3 asks us to summarise the poem in your own words. So a man steals a ring from a skeleton, the skeleton comes back for it. Quite simply, you could put more to it. What do you notice about the way the poem is organised? So this might be talking about stanzas, which are like verses. It might be talking about rhyming couplets. It might be talking about how many lines, those sorts of things. Why had the poet chose to use capitals for throw it away? Do we think they want it whispered or shouted? How do you think William's wife will react when she's certain the skeleton has gone? Interesting. Once they're not in danger anymore, is she going to be cross about the ring? Is she going to be sad that she's lost it? Is she going to be confused? Is she going to be mad with him? Is she just going to be really, really, really upset? The poem finishes with the word still. What impression does this give you about the skeleton? So that they've gone and everything's peaceful, the skeleton's dead. Which evidence suggests the house at the top of the hill? And again, this is quite specific towards the end where there's the skeleton clatters downhill. So quite a specific one to find. And the ellipses, dots, are used to create different effects in the first and last stanza. Explain how they're used. In the first stanza, it's for the passage of time. One is walking around, and in the last stanza, it's about getting quieter as it disappears. A really, really, really good short poem. Lots of good vocabulary, lots of good atmosphere and tension being built. Really good for hooking kids in, but still full of all this material that you can use. And hopefully what you're seeing today from what we're doing is that there are a lot of there's a lot of scope for using different material. You can explore this with young children, the Lighthouse Keeper's Lunch, the Hand of Surprise story, but you can also take it into other formats such as poetry and more complicated works, and it still works. It's really good. This would be a good opportunity to take a break now if you'd like to. Just pause me and come back once you're done. Okay, thank you. Okay, in the second part of the session, we're going to have a look at some rhyming patterns. So let's have a look at this. In a rhyming pattern, each line's ending gets a letter, okay? If the sound is the same as an earlier line, it gets the same letter. So for instance, here we've got roses are red, so our ending sound is ed. Violets are blue, it ends in oo. Sugar is sweet, eat, and so are you, oo. So red is A, because it's the first one, so ed gets the A, oo gets the B. Eat doesn't rhyme with anything already, so it gets a C. And oo at the end of U rhymes with blue, so it gets the same letter, the B. Okay. This is used across right into GCSE as well. It's actually part of how we identify rhyme in poetry. Let's have a look at this one. As I was going out one day, my head fell off and rolled away. When I saw when it had gone, I picked it up and put it on. A policeman said, "Where are your feet?" I looked down and sadly said, "I left them both asleep in bed." Okay. Nice little rhyme there. Okay, we've got a nice rhyming pattern going on. So again, first of all, you find where your rhymes are, and they've been color coded this time. So day and away. So we've got the A at the end. On and on. In gone, it's spelled O-N-E. It's not about the spelling, remember. It's about the sound. It's a poem. It's to be performed. Feet, the eat doesn't rhyme with anything. So that one's on its own. And then we've got said and bed. Okay, so if you look at the letters, our rhyming scheme is A, A, B, B, C, D, D. Okay, that's our rhyming pattern. Okay. Let's try this one then. You have a go at doing this one. Sing a song of sixpence, a pocket full of rye, 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie. So we're just taking our end sound. So sixpence, I've got a sound, I've got an I sound, I've got birds, and I've got an I sound. So there's my end sound. So we'll get the A, I will get the B, birds will get the C, I. Oh, I've already got an I. That was with B, so that one gets the B. Let's see if we agree. A, B, C, B. Do you agree with that? Okay, remember, nursery rhymes are the shortest, easiest forms of rhyming of poems. We call them rhymes. It kind of, I think, takes some of the scariness away that we get when we talk about poetry and we think about longer verses, okay? But they're the simplest form of rhyme. Let's have a look at this one then. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Have a go at that one. All, N, N. A, B, B. Good stuff. Have a look at this one. Hickory dickory dock. The mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck 1. The mouse ran down. Hickory dickory dock. Have a little go at doing that one. So look at your endings. Dock, clock, all they rhyme. So A. 1, down, all they don't. So A, down, dock. No. A, B, C. Oh, dock, dock. A, B, C, A. Do we agree? So, a nursery rhyme being the simplest form of poem, okay, that we'll come across. So these are perfect for using with reception age children. They don't need to be great long verses. They don't need to have 27 lines in order to use them, okay? We can still pick out the key principles, which the children will then build on as they move on. So let's think about some questions that we could use with a rhyme. Simple question, words, what, who, where, when, why. Okay, think about 2 questions you could ask about the rhyme. They don't need to be really difficult ones. There doesn't need to be anything overly complicated about them. What could you ask? Why did the mouse run up the clock? Who is the mouse living with? Who does the clock belong to? What is hickory dickory dock? You can make it as simple as that, okay? It's the very beginnings of inference, okay? Taking on board. What time is it? The clock struck 1. It's 1 o'clock. Yeah, it's a very, very, very start of inference. And we would make the questions really simple to start with. It would be so simple. What ran up the clock? What time was it? Yeah, you make it so simple to start with so the children can see. And even before children can read, we can build an inference because look at the picture. Remember we talked about the very first books the children will quite often have will be picture books. They won't have any words in at all. The first books I'll start looking at independently, okay? Because the children are inferring from pictures and that's still the inference skill. What can you see? What is going on? Only it's not with words this time, it's just with pictures, okay? Teach them to look for detail and using it to build up their ideas, putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 4, okay? So for instance, with this one, you might say, what can you see? Okay. Have a think. Might turn it into who. Who is in the bath? Who is upstairs? Who lives in this house? Okay. Might turn it into when. When did the child go to bed? Might turn it into why. Why is the kitchen cupboard open? Okay. And you can make up your own stories with these. Okay, there's some nice frames here. We've got a school scene, a house in the morning, a birthday scene. Who is having a birthday party? Where is the cake? Why has the little girl got a hand up? What happens at wet playtime? Okay. You haven't got to get 30 questions from each one, but it's just about getting the children to start asking the questions, because when they're asking the questions, they're realizing these things need answers, there needs to be an explanation, and that's the start of inference. And when they come to write their own stories, it's the start of explaining things away and adding detail. Okay. An activity for you to try at home using one of those pictures. You could extend this out, make a story, choose one of those children, give them a name, make a story based on where this starts from. You could make up your own story. It could be a verbal story. You don't have to write it down. Perhaps you're going to tell the story of that family in the morning in that house, or the story of that child's birthday party. Yeah, just use what you can see and extend on it. That's entirely what we're doing. We're stretching vocabulary out, we're questioning, we're extending ideas. Okay, really helps your children with literacy. Again, it doesn't all have to be about storybooks or picture books or non-fiction books. Okay, you can use magazines, newspaper pictures, reading books, whatever you've got to hand. Okay, comics. There's nothing wrong with any of this. It will all encourage your children with reading. Okay. Think about the difference between open and closed questions. There is no problem with using closed questions. Just make sure you're aware of using open ones too. Okay. Try and use more open than closed where you can when you're doing this sort of activity. Try and extend out your children's thinking. Asking questions will do the same. Okay. Some more simple story scenes here. Where are they? In the woods. What are they doing in the woods? Do you think they've gone for a play? Some more pictures there that will help with that. Some of the activities for you this week. Some inference cards with some practice questions on. There's a nice link here to the video of the Lighthouse Keeper's Lunch, somebody reading the story. If you wanted to use that, a nice matching activity, and some of the questioning tips from Key Stage 1 and 2. These will all be sent out to you with the attachment. Okay. So this week, we've taken on our one book and lots of ideas for it, the 10 ideas. Some questions to ask, thinking again about whether they're open or closed, thinking about the types of questions in schools and the links to the Key Stage expectations, using different types of material, poems. We've done an instruction list. We've looked at stories. We've looked at more complicated stories. We've looked at just pictures, okay, asking questions. And we've talked a bit about rhyming patterns too, which also fits in with the poetry. So thinking about all that, where would you put yourself now? Do you understand the topic a little bit more? About what the children do at school to read? Do you need some more help with any of it? What colour would you put yourself on there? And if from that there's any specifics you'd like to share, what's been useful, what you might need more help with, anything extra you need, please do feel free to email me with that feedback. Next week, we're looking at spelling, patterns, root words, homonyms and homophones, and some of the Key Stage 1 and 2 spelling content for SATs. So there's my email address again, the links for looking at other courses. Thank you for attending. I hope you found it useful, and I will see you again next time. Thank you.